All right, let's dive into Mean Girls. We got that awesome article you sent in, and I think it's time to really unpack why this movie is more than just your typical teen comedy.
It really is more than that. It's kind of amazing how it manages to blend humor and social commentary so well.
Right.
And it all starts with the source material. It's actually based on Rosalind Wiseman's book. What was it called? Queen Bees and Wannabes, I think.
Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
one. I actually read that back in high school.
Oh, wow. So you're speaking from experience then, huh?
Maybe a little.
Well, the book really digs into the social dynamics of teenagers and adolescents. And Tina Fey, I mean, what a genius, right? She took that and turned it into a screenplay that's both hilarious and insightful.
Seriously. And she manages to tackle those awkward high school power struggles, the whole coming of age roller coaster, in a way that still feels so relatable all these years later.
Definitely.
What do you think it is about Tina Fey's writing that makes it stand out?
For me, it's definitely the dialogue, like those iconic one-liners that we all quote. They're brilliant, but she doesn't just stop there. She also weaves in these really sharp observations about power dynamics.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Like, remember when Gretchen tells Cady, the limit does not exist?
Uh-huh, classic.
It's funny on the surface, but it also hints at Regina's hold over the group, this manipulative hold she has.
Oh, totally. That line is so hilarious, but it's also so revealing about how the plastics operate. Like Regina, she sets these impossible standards, and Gretchen, desperate to stay in her good graces, just convinces herself she can achieve anything, even defying math.
Right, and it's not just that line. Think about the whole burn book incident. It's played for laughs.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it really highlights the destructive power of gossip and social manipulation. Like, you laugh, but you also kind of cringe because you can see how easily those rumors could really hurt people.
It's a little too real, honestly. And it's interesting the way the film kind of plays with that whole typical coming of age story. Caddy starts as this outsider, but instead of just overcoming obstacles and gaining popularity, she gets sucked into the very thing she was trying to avoid.
You're so right. That's what makes the film so clever. It's almost like a cautionary tale. Like, it's showing how easily we can be seduced by power and then end up becoming the very thing we criticize.
Oh, I see that.
I don't know, did you ever relate to Caddy's struggle to fit in? Even if it meant maybe, like, changing herself a little?
Oh, absolutely. I think pretty much everyone has had those moments where they've felt the pressure to conform. Maybe not to the extent of wearing pink on Wednesdays, but in more subtle ways for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
What about Caddy's transformation? What stands out to you about how she goes from mathlete to, well, a plat?
I think Lindsay Lohan does such a fantastic job portraying that whole moral struggle that Caddy goes through. Like, we literally see her go from this innocent outsider to someone who's manipulating others and spreading rumors.
It's pretty wild.
It is, and it's such a powerful reminder that pursuing popularity, can sometimes corrupt even the best intentions.
For sure. And okay, we have to talk about Regina George.
Oh, yes.
Rachel McAdams' performance is just iconic.
It really is.
She is the ultimate queen bee, but there's this depth to her character that goes beyond the stereotypical mean girl.
Absolutely.
Mm.
McAdams is just brilliant at conveying both Regina's charisma and her underlying vulnerability. Remember that scene where she breaks down after being called fat?
Oh, yeah.
We see this glimpse of the insecurity that kind of fuels her need for control, and it makes her such a more complex, more intriguing character.
So true, and I think that's what makes Mean Girls so compelling. It's not just these one-dimensional characters. Even the supporting players like Giannis, Gretchen, and Karen, they're more than just stereotypes.
They really are. It's like they each represent a different part of that whole high school ecosystem.
Right.
Like, you have the cynical observer, the loyal follower, the, ditzy but lovable one.
Totally.
And the film uses those personalities so cleverly to explore those power dynamics at play.
It's not just about teenage drama, is it? It feels like it's making a statement about power structures in society as a whole. Like, think about how Regina's reign works. It wouldn't work without everyone else playing along, right?
Exactly. That's a really sharp observation. Like, the film shows us how power isn't just about force. It's about the subtle ways we reinforce ththese hierarchies through our actions and even our inaction.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Think about how Gretchen gets all nervous and corrects herself when she accidentally calls Regina, well.
Oh my gosh, yes.
It just shows how deeply ingrained those power dynamics are within the group.
It's such a small moment, but so powerful. It really makes you think about how often we might unknowingly be contributing to similar power dynamics in our own lives.
It's definitely something to think about,
Yeah.
whether it's in our workplaces, friendships, families. I think it's important to recognize those subtle power dynamics and, maybe challenge them when we need to.
That's a great takeaway. Mean Girls isn't just a comedy, it's a film that makes you think about these bigger social issues and how they connect to our own lives.
It really is. And what's amazing is that it does all this while still being incredibly funny. It
Mhm.
just like perfectly balances those deeper themes with sharp wit and clever dialogue. It's just a really unique and unforgettable experience.
For sure. Okay, so are you ready to take a deeper look at the cinematic craftsmanship of Mean Girls? I'm especially curious about how the director, Mark Waters, brings this whole heightened high school world to
Oh,
life.
yeah, let's get into that. Mean Girls isn't just about the word, it's about the visuals, too. The whole aesthetic of the film is so distinct. It really plays a key role in amplifying the humor and the depth of the story.
So, we're diving into Mark Waters' direction and how he created this visually distinct world in Mean Girls. What specifically jumps out at you about his approach?
Well, I think the film's use of color is really interesting, especially with the plastics.
Oh, yeah.
Like Regina,
Yeah.
they often wear these bright pinks and pastels, and it creates this visual contrast with the rest of the students.
Right. It's like they're in their own little world.
Exactly, like
Like,
a heightened, almost artificial reality.
I like that, yeah. It's like their clothes reflect their exaggerated personalities, like how they're trying to project this image of perfection.
Absolutely. And the way those colors pop against the more, I guess, muted tones of the school setting, it just further emphasizes their separation.
Yeah, it makes them seem so untouchable. Like they're not just popular, they're this elite group.
Exactly. And it's not just the color. The camera work plays a role too.
Mm.
You notice how Waters often uses those close-up shots during those tense moments, those confrontations.
Oh, yeah, she does. I hadn't really thought about that.
It creates this sense of claustrophobia, like the characters are trapped in this pressure cooker of
Yeah.
social hierarchy.
Oh, yeah, like they can't escape.
Exactly.
I see what you mean. Like, think about that scene in the cafeteria when Caddy confronts Regina about the whole sabotage thing with the diet.
Oh, yes.
Like, the close ups on their faces just heighten the drama.
Totally. Those close-ups really draw us into their heads, their
Mhm.
psychological states. Like we experience their anxiety and insecurities right along with them. It's subtle, but it adds so much.
It's so effective. And speaking of lasting impact, I feel like Mean Girls is almost even more relevant today with social media and everything. What are your thoughts on how the film's themes have, I guess, evolved in our digital world?
It's fascinating how Mean Girls almost predicted so many of the social dynamics that we see playing out online. Like the burn book has basically gone digital.
It's true.
Instead of writing rumors in a notebook, people can spread gossip and tear each other down with a single post, a tweet, whatever.
Oh, for sure. And it's not just high school anymore, right? It feels like everyone's trying to be a plastic online, like curating their lives for likes and followers.
Absolutely. And just like in the film, social media can really foster this culture of comparison and competition.
Mhm.
It's like we're all constantly vying for attention and validation, often at the expense of others. It's
Yeah.
like that scene where Regina compliments Caddy's skirt, and then what does she do?
Buys the same one.
Exactly, just to undermine her.
Such a classic Regina move. And it perfectly illustrates how social media can be this tool for manipulation. People can use those likes and comments and followers to assert their dominance.
Right, and it creates these artificial hierarchies.
Like, so messed up.
It is. And it's often a really subtle form of power dynamics that we don't always notice, but it
Right.
can have such a huge impact on our self-esteem and how we feel.
Totally. I mean, it makes you wonder, has social media just made us all a little meaner?
Yeah, it's a good question. Like, the anonymity of the internet can make it easier to say things that you wouldn't dream of saying to someone's face.
So true. And the film really highlights that words have power, spoken or typed. And in the age of social media, those words can reach so many more
Oh,
people.
yeah. The potential for hurt is just amplified.
It's like that quote from Janice, the one about the two kinds of evil
Oh,
people.
yeah. Those who do evil stuff and those who see evil stuff being done and don't try to stop it.
Right. It's like social media has made it even easier to just be a bystander.
That's such a relevant quote for today. Like,
Mhm.
we have this responsibility, to speak up against bullying and harassment online and just create a more compassionate space.
Which brings us back to one of the core messages of the film, empathy.
Absolutely.
Mean Girls really encourages us to look beyond those superficial labels and see the humanity in each other. Do you think that message resonates even more strongly today?
I do. I really do. Like, in a world that feels so divided, cultivating empathy and understanding, it's more important than ever.
Mm.
We need to be more mindful of how our words and actions affect others, both online and offline.
And Mean Girls does such a good job delivering those messages in a way that's entertaining and makes you think. Like you can watch it a million times and still pick up on new things.
It's true. It's a testament to how well made the film is that it's still sparking conversations about these important topics almost 20 years later.
Hmm.
And it's not just the themes, the characters, the dialogue, the style, it all still feels fresh.
It's a true cultural touchstone.
Mm.
Okay, before we wrap up, I did want to touch on something else I found interesting about the film. It plays with different genres, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's a comedy, obviously, but there are elements of satire, drama, even a touch of thriller at times. What do you think about that? Like, how does that contribute to the film's success?
I think it's a great observation. Blending genres definitely adds to the film's complexity and appeal. It lets the filmmakers explore these serious themes while still keeping things light and entertaining, like the burn book thing.
Yeah.
It's presented in a comedic way, but it also has these darker undertones, you
That
know?
does,
It
yeah.
highlights how harmful rumors can be.
It's like walking that line between humor and social commentary. And it's so well done. Like, we laugh, we cringe, we think. It's a really dynamic experience.
Exactly. And it keeps us guessing as viewers,
Mhm.
prevents it from falling into those predictable tropes. It's part of what makes Mean Girls so rewatchable.
It's true. Always something new to find. Okay, so I think it's safe to say Mean Girls is more than just your typical teen comedy. It's smart, it's insightful, and it's surprisingly nuanced.
It really is. It speaks to the complexities of growing up,
Mhm.
the power of social dynamics and the importance of finding your own voice and your own identity.
And it does it with wit and charm. Okay, now before we totally wrap things up, I wanted to circle back to something we touched on earlier, the film's relevance in the age of social media. We were talking about how Mean Girls kind of predicted so much of what we see online today. It's almost like they had a crystal ball or something.
Right. It's crazy how accurate it is. Makes you wonder if things have really changed that much.
I know, it's like that need to belong, to fit in, to climb that social ladder. It's like it's hardwired into us. And social media just gives us a whole new way to play that game.
It's true. It's like a new arena for all those old dynamics.
And in some ways, it's even worse, right? Like back in the day, you could at least escape the high school drama when you went home. But now with social media, it's like it's always there, always on.
Yeah, it's constant. That constant connectivity is a double-edged sword, for sure.
Yeah.
Like, on the one hand, we can connect with people all over the world, but it also means those lines between our public and private lives get blurred.
Totally. It's like we're always performing for some invisible audience.
Exactly.
And it creates this pressure, right, to present this perfect, curated version of ourselves, just like the plastics. It's exhausting.
Oh, tell me about it. I think most of us have felt that pressure at some point. It's so easy to get caught up in comparing ourselves to others.
Yep.
You see these perfect lives online, and it's hard not to feel like you're not measuring up.
It's so true.
But that's where Mean Girls comes in.
Right.
It reminds us that those perfect images are often just a facade. No one's life is actually like that.
Oh, totally. Remember that scene where Regina freaks out because her hair is frizzy?
Yeah. Even the queen bee has insecurities.
It's a good reminder that no one's life is perfect, no matter what their Instagram might tell you.
And the film encourages us to embrace those imperfections,
Yeah.
to find our own version of fetch, as Janice would say.
I love that.
It's about accepting who we are, quirks and all.
And I think that message is maybe even more important now than it was back then.
I agree.
Like in a world where we're bombarded with all these images of so-called perfection, it's easy to forget that our worth isn't tied to likes or followers or any of that.
It's not. And Mean Girls does a great job of reminding us of that. And it does it in such a fun, clever way. It's a movie that makes you laugh, it makes you think, and hopefully it leaves you feeling a little more self-acceptance, a little more compassion for yourself and others.
Absolutely. So, as we wrap up our deep dive into Mean Girls, we want to leave you with a question. Does the film offer a realistic portrayal of high school? Or is it more of an exaggeration, a satire? What resonated with you most about the film?
It's a question that people have been debating for years, and I think the answer probably depends on your own experiences. But one thing's for sure, the film really captures those universal truths about being human. That desire to belong, the messiness of friendships, figuring out who you are.
It really does, and it does it all with so much humor and heart. It's a film that just keeps resonating with people no matter how old they are.
So next time you're looking for a movie that's both entertaining and thought-provoking, give Mean Girls another watch. Maybe you'll see it in a new light.
You might be surprised by how much this teen comedy has to say about the world, even all these years later. And remember, like Caddy learns, real happiness isn't about climbing that social ladder. It's about finding your people, owning who you are, and being kind. On that note, we'll wrap up our deep dive into Mean Girls. We hope you enjoyed this trip back to North Shore High. And until next time, stay fetch.